Well, good evening, Melbourne. Good evening, councillors. I declare this meeting open at 5:30 p.m. and I welcome councillors and management and members of the public attending tonight's meeting, both in person and virtually. We are meeting on Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country, and I respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we govern, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung peoples of the Kulin, and pay respects to their elders past and present. We acknowledge and honour the unbroken spiritual, cultural and political connection they have maintained to this unique place for more than 200 generations. This meeting is being streamed live and the recording will be published on Council's website by close of business tomorrow. The unconfirmed minutes of this meeting will also be available from the City of Melbourne's website as soon as practicable. I request that all mobile phones be turned off or to silent for the duration of the meeting, and I'm pleased to say that no apologies have been received. We move on to agenda item 2, disclosure of conflicts of interest. If any councillor has either a general or material conflict of interest as defined in the Local Government Act in relation to a matter to be considered by council, please disclose the type and nature of your interest prior to consideration of the item. We move on to agenda item 3, confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. I call on a councillor to move a motion adopting the open minutes of council meeting number 12 held on Tuesday the 28th of October 2005. Thank you, Councillor Camillo. Second, Councillor Gladys Liu. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand.
Sorry, Lord Mayor, can I just confirm those minutes were updated? Perfect, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Eagle Eye Councillor Andrew Rouse, for those updates. And I consider those council minutes passed. Can I just confirm with the amendments? Yep, declared carried unanimously. We move on to agenda item 4, matters arising from the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any matters arising from the previous meeting? Anybody wishes to call out? No? All right. We turn to correspondence and submissions. The following submissions have been received in accordance with the Council's governance rules. In relation to agenda item 6.1, Westgate Tunnel impacts, notice of motion, including Hawke Street improvements. There have been 15 items of correspondence in relation to this item. Given this is a council meeting, we don't have the usual, the FMC processes for public submissions. I will read these all out of respect for those people who've taken the time to correspond with us on these items. So we have an item of correspondence from Archie Payton, Sharon Blance, Brent Coghill, Sarah Webster, JP Karnowitz, Gemma Gooding, Angela Di Pasquale, Tony Robinson, Stephen Harcher, Sybil Gibb, Alice Leake, Mary Masters from North and West Melbourne Association, Carl Hessian and Jane Good. Thank you to all our submitters there. In relation to agenda item 6.2, commercial waste collector permits, we have an item of correspondence from Gail Sloan, the Waste Management and Resource Recovery Association of Australia, and Mark Smith, the Victorian Waste Management Association. In relation to agenda item 7.2, notice of motion, Councillor Raf Camillo, funding support towards the Pellegrini's documentary. We have an item of correspondence from Chris Thrum. In relation to agenda item 7.3, notice of motion, Councillor Philip Leilu, revised City of Melbourne position regarding medically supervised injecting services. There have been 34 items of correspondence in relation to this item. We have received items of correspondence from Katrina Corver, Dr. Annie Madden AO, Harm Reduction Australia, Christopher Lamb, Samantha Coleridge Frisbee, Amelia Sumner, Rebecca Winter, Dr. Mariana Jauncey from the Uniting Medically Supervised Injecting Centre, Surilini Fernando on behalf of Hamish McLaughlin, Fitzroy Legal Service, Dr. Amanda Roxburgh, Dr. Hayden Green, Dr. Jack Kane, Rowena Coyle, Professor Kate Sear, Peter Higgs, Nicole Bartholomew, CEO, CoHealth, Amanda Stone, Yarra Drug and Health Forum, Sharon Lee Neven, Councillor Sarah McKenzie, City of Yarra, Professor Susan Nielsen, Monash Addiction Research Centre, Aaron Moon, Sion Crawford, Harm Reduction Victoria, and Jared McMore for the Pharmaceutical Society of Australia. Mary Tomsick, Professor Dan Lubman, AM, Turning Point, Madeline Kreshmer, Aid Webber, Uniting Victoria, Tasmania. I think that's Uniting Church, Victoria, Tasmania. Andrea Fisher, Jill Mellon Robinson, Dr. Sophia Schroeder, Paul Dietz, the Burnett Institute, Dr. Ryan Kuncha, Dr. Erin Layla, Alcohol and Drug Foundation, Chris Cristoforo, Victorian Alcohol and Drug Association, Greg Denham, Julia Daly. All right, we move on to the status of confidential items. Does any councillor wish to discuss the confidential status of any of the confidential items listed on the public agenda? No. All right.
No, Lord Mayor.
Thank you for that. Finance and Governance Lead, Owen Guest. We move on to reports from committee. Agenda item 5, there are no reports from committee. We move on to agenda item 6, reports from management. There are 8 reports from management. The first of those is agenda item 6.1, Westgate Tunnel Impacts, Notice of Motion, including Hawke Street improvements. I don't believe there's any conflicts in relation to this item, and I think we will seek a presentation on this item. I'm looking to you, Rick. Do you wish to lead on this item? All right, I'm going to request that Rick Kwasek, our General Manager, Infrastructure, please present to us on this item. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and through you. This is a presentation that was presented to the local community last Thursday in relation to the Westgate Tunnel impacts, and also includes proposed improvements to Hawke Street in relation to concept development. Next slide, please. Just by way of background, the Transport Amenity Program is jointly funded by the state government and the City of Melbourne, and it's set to try and offset the impacts of the Westgate Tunnel, and was developed following an environmental effects statement which identified potential need for further work following the opening of the Westgate Tunnel. The TAP program aims to look at opportunities for improvements both to traffic and try and minimise impacts to the local road network. Next slide. The program is co-funded, as I mentioned, up to $100 million. It is governed by a Central City Transport Committee and co-chaired by both Department of Transport and Planning and City of Melbourne. The intention is to work collaboratively with the Department of Transport and Planning to look for projects that will help improve the amenity in the local community and try and minimise impact to the local road network. Next slide. There have been several deliverables through the TAP program. There have been 10 or 11 projects completed. There are some projects which are in train and undergoing works, and there were several projects delivered as part of the Day 1 works by Department of Transport and Planning. The Day 1 works were there to try and minimise rat running through the local road network and included some safety improvements. Next slide. In relation to 2 key pieces of work, the Spencer Street North Master Plan and also the Victoria Street Opportunities Plan, there has been some work undertaken in these 2 strategic documents. The request from Department of Transport and Planning has been that these works be paused for a period of 6 months after the opening of the Westgate Tunnel, and that is to allow traffic patterns to settle and for the traffic movement to be monitored during this period. Regular monitoring will be undertaken by the department, and if required, appropriate amendments will be made to those day one treatments. The monitoring period will also help to inform the outcome of the Spencer Street North Master Plan and also help us in developing opportunities for Victoria Street. Next slide. As I mentioned, the presentation also includes work that's been undertaken on the Hawke Street concept plan. A plan was approved by Council in 2023, which included improvements for Hawke Street, which part of that design included a separated cycle lane, greening improvements, and a linear park that ran along the length of Hawke Street. Since that time, there has been additional investigation undertaken which identified below ground services which impacted on the delivery of the concept by way of reducing the potential to plant trees over the below ground services. One of the services is a high pressure gas main, and unfortunately there's an exclusion zone from planting trees above or near that high pressure gas main. Next slide. This was a plan that was originally approved by Council in 23, and it is intended that we go back to the community, presenting back the original concept, but also a proposed revised concept, which includes a slight alternative to the original one by modifying the tree planting zones. Next slide. The revised option 2 includes most of the planting to occur in the central median strip, which is away from both overhead power lines and below ground services, and allows us to actually maximise our tree canopy, but also provide improvements to the local park, expanding that by a significant amount, almost 2,036 square metres of street greening, and expanding the existing reserve to 2,208 square metres. Next slide. These are some renders which provide a bit of an indication around the two options. The option on the left, option 1, was the original proposed option with the reduced tree planting over the below ground services, and option 2 shows the revised concept, which shows some significant planting in the central median with smaller planting on either side of the street. The street also includes a separated cycle lane or a cycle lane on either side, and reduces road traffic to one lane in either direction. Next slide. This slide here provides information on the day one treatments that were undertaken by Department of Transport and Planning. There were 5 key intersections with treatments, and the report outlines the specifics of those treatments, but essentially they're there to try and minimise the traffic movement through the local road network. The diagram to the top left of the page in yellow shows the proposed movement of traffic, or the intention of proposed movement of traffic following the opening of the Westgate Tunnel. Next slide, please. These are just some images of some of the treatments. You can see they're predominantly temporary treatments, but it also included some modifications to traffic signalisation and sequencing of those traffic signals. Next slide. As indicated, Department of Transport and Planning will be undertaking monitoring as and when the Westgate Tunnel opens. The monitoring will be undertaken on a regular basis with transport or traffic numbers, providing information on traffic movements. If necessary, some of the day 1 treatments may be modified, subject to the type of information they receive back from this monitoring. Regular updates will be provided to the community, and if necessary, changes will be made to those treatments. The intention is that the community have an opportunity to provide feedback for a period of around 4 months, and this feedback will help to inform the final treatments in the precinct. Next slide. As indicated, community feedback will be open for the 6-month duration following the opening. It will run specifically from February for submissions. That's the formal consultation period. The outcome of that feedback will be collated and shared with the community and shared with council. The intention is also to share some traffic modelling which was developed more recently just to confirm that it aligned with the original traffic modelling that was undertaken back in 2017. The community feedback will help DTP and COM determine the best long-term arrangements for any TAP-related treatments. The timeline at the bottom of the page shows the general timing of the monitoring and feedback period. Next slide. I believe that completes the presentation.
All right, thank you for that, Rick. Are there any questions for Rick Quasek? Councillor Dr. Olivia Ball.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Rick, for that presentation. Am I right in thinking that is not the identical slideshow that was presented on Thursday night to the community?
It might have one slide taken out, but essentially it follows the same presentation as was presented to the community.
Thank you. And have those slides been published on our website?
The pack that was presented to the community has been published on the website. It's on the North and West Melbourne Project's website.
The North and West Melbourne Project website, which is part of the
which is part of the City of Melbourne website.
Council's website. Thank you. Does it include the slides that DTP presented on Thursday?
It does, yes.
Tremendous. Thank you. So, since this fund, this TAP fund of $100 million was announced over 7 years ago in 2018, less than $11 million has been spent. Is that right?
That's correct.
These works were promised to be undertaken over the last 7 years while the tunnel was being built, yet over only 11% of the funds has been expended and the tunnel is about to open. Could you summarise the main reason or reasons why the rollout has been so slow?
What I can say is much of the early work related to feasibility studies, so it looked at how best to actually roll out the improvements to the precinct. Some of that work included work on the Spencer Street North Master Plan draft, as well as understanding the road network. Some improvements have been delivered. There's a table in the report, attachment 1, which looks at some of those deliverables.
Yes. So you've just given an outline of what has occurred and what has been spent, but only 11% of the fund has been spent in the time that we expected it to be expended. So could I put the question again? Can you summarise the main reason or reasons why the $100 million has not been spent yet and the mitigations are not in place in time for the opening of the tunnel?
I guess the response I provided provides an update on the type of work that has been undertaken.
Yes.
I really can't provide any further information as to why more work hasn't been delivered.
So you can't give me a reason?
No. Much of it would have been informed by the feasibility, so that work needed to occur first. I believe this work is, I guess, a generational type project, so we need to ensure that the work that's undertaken is appropriate and correct for that precinct.
So the joint position of the council and the DTP in 2018 has changed I would summarise the position in 2018 was mitigate anticipated traffic before the tunnel opens, to now wait and see what the traffic does before intervening. Is that a fair characterisation of where we are now?
So Department of Transport and Planning had requested that we pause works on TAP-related projects up until 6 months after the opening. I guess some of that was around understanding the traffic movements through that period. Given the nature of the type of project that's being delivered, it seemed reasonable to do that, and it was at the request of Department of Transport. Our intention is to progress works on Hawke Street development with the local community, so that when we complete the 6-month monitoring period, we're then able to commence detailed design and procurement of contractors to deliver on Hawke Street. But I guess to your point, I don't think the actual intention has changed in the sense that the work from TAP is there to actually improve amenity in the precinct and try and mitigate the impacts of the tunnel.
So even though this is a joint fund paid for 50-50 by both levels of government, and the announcement in 2018 was a joint announcement, you're telling me now that DTP made this decision to fundamentally change the character and rollout of the TAP. Is that correct?
In the final stages of TAP, just prior to the tunnel opening, it seemed prudent to pause works in that area, given the nature of the transport and traffic that would be spilling into the local road network. Given we have a responsibility as a local road authority to ensure that we minimise the impacts on local road network, we believe that the work that was undertaken by Department of Transport in the early treatments was there to try and minimise that impact on the local road network, and we feel that was appropriate.
So you're talking about the halting a rollout which was at that point 11% of the intended expenditure. Can I ask when this decision was made to wait and see rather than mitigate in advance? You say it was made by DTP. When was this decision made and why?
Well, it was in the months leading up to the finalisation or the timing around the opening of the Westgate Tunnel. So I suspect around 6 months out, the request was that we pause works on TAP-related projects.
So the report does say that that was paused in May of 2025, which is 6 months ago indeed, but only 11% had been spent to that point. Owing to these delays, paragraph 16 of your report says TAP is now extended to December 2027. So the remaining $89 million is expected to be spent in the next 2 years. Is that right? And if not, we can expect a further extension.
I would expect there would be a request for a further extension on the TAP funding. At this point in time, there is almost $67 million committed to various projects. The balance of those funds are still awaiting projects to be assigned to the balance of funding. It is likely to be unreasonable for us to be delivering $67 million worth of work over the next 2 years. So we will be putting in a request for an extension to that funding.
I see, thank you. The joint press release boasted in 2018 that this was an historic and record-breaking amount to be spent on streetscape upgrades and greening of $100 million in 2018 terms. So why is the language now being used by both Council and DTP up to $100 million?
That's the wording from the agreement. So I'm not sure what was originally referred to, but
it didn't say up to $100 million. The press release boasted about it would be $100 million and said it was record-breaking and historic amount. But moving on, the press release also promised new parkland, I quote, new parkland and open space along Moonee Ponds Creek. I don't see any mention of this in your report. Is that still intended part of TAP?
In the current projects committed or completed, there's no mention of Moonee Ponds Creek. However, that's not to say that there would not be future deliverables along Moonee Ponds Creek, it would have to actually go through the CCTC committee for approval as a project that's both supported by Department of Transport and Planning and Council.
Thank you. The FMC resolution on the 2nd of September this year asked for publication of the traffic modelling, quote, without delay. In the 12 weeks since then, the modelling has not been published, and your report before us tonight says the modelling will be published or may not be published until the 19th of December. So why is that delay?
I believe the Department of Transport is seeking authority from the Minister's office in relation to the release of the modelling. At officer level, both Department of Transport and Planning and Council officers support the release of the modelling. We're just waiting on final approval.
Tremendous, thank you. Although the recent traffic modelling that was done this year in July has not yet been published, as you just said, is it the case, do I understand from your report, that this new modelling that we have yet to see validates, I think is the word you've used, that means does it confirm or reach the same conclusions as the modelling undertaking and the predicted impacts of the tunnel that were concluded in 2017?
From what I've seen, the modelling is consistent.
It's consistent, I see. So even though we thought there was a need to redo the modelling has reached the same conclusions as in 2017?
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution also in September of this year asked for an account of all expenditure to date, including funds committed in this financial year from the TAP program, itemised by project, which you've provided, thank you, but it also asked for these items to be allocated to a particular financial year, both that is which has been expended and any that is to be expended in this financial year. So I'm referring to the table in attachment 1. Can the table be published on our website with these details added as required by the September resolution, please?
As part of the budget process, we'll be allocating funding towards the TAP program in line with deliverable outcomes. So I guess from that perspective, it will be balanced against other commitments as part of our budget process. The intention is that in terms of deliverables, Hawke Street is high on the agenda, as is the Spencer Street North Master Plan and the finalising an opportunities plan for Victoria Street. So all of those deliverables are high on the agenda and will be part of the budget bid process for Council. Thank
you, Rick. I think you may have misunderstood my question. So I'm referring to attachment 1 and the table that appears on page 7 of your report. The resolution of Council in September asked you to itemise the projects and the financial year in which past expenditure has been spent and any in the current financial year, presumably within the current budget. So I'm not talking about future projections of what will be spent, but the current financial year and past financial years. The resolution of Council asked for that detail, and I'm asking you now, will you please publish the table in attachment 2 with those financial years added against each item?
Yes, that sounds reasonable.
Thank you very much. The resolution in September also sought recommendations on how and when to conduct public consultation on the Spencer Street North Master Plan. Paragraph 28 of your report says these consultations will occur sometime after the 6 months of traffic modelling. Do you have any advice for us, as we requested in September, on how this consultation will be undertaken?
It will follow a process similar to other similar type master plans, and there will be a report coming to Council for consideration around an engagement, communication and engagement plan. So it will be for Council to consider the process. It's likely to include face-to-face meetings and pop-ups and meetings with the local community around the finalisation of the master plan.
Thank you. Paragraph 31.2 of your report promises new bike lanes on Hawke Street between Adderley and Victoria Streets that will be, quote, fully protected and or double chevrons, which I presume is a painted treatment. Would I be correct in assuming that if we paint in new bike lanes on Hawke Street, they will not count towards our 50-kilometre objective of physically protected bike lanes?
Yeah, it'd be fair to say that, although given where the concept is at the moment, it's fairly early stages. It's a concept, so we'll be going through design development. Normally chevrons are used when the road space doesn't allow for protected cycle lanes. We'll work through that as part of the design development and detailed design process.
Thank you. So are painted chevron lanes suitable for high traffic, high speed roads?
They're certainly suitable for a road network. They're actually part of our design guidelines, the City of Melbourne design guidelines for cycling. We have double chevrons in our design guidelines.
I'm not sure if I missed your answer. Are they suitable for high speed, high traffic roads?
Provided there's a cycle lane, the intention of chevrons is when there's insufficient road space to provide a fully separated bike lane. And yes, they can be used in those circumstances. Ideally, though, if the opportunity presents itself, you would use the separated cycle lane.
Thank you very much. I just have a few questions in relation to the Hawke Street design, please. I just wanted to clarify the first report of yours published on Thursday. Were the concept designs left out of that version of the report and it's been uploaded since I asked for the benefit of the public who may be looking at the wrong version of this report?
No. The attachments have always included option 2, which is the alternative concept design. So that's been included since the posting of the report.
Great. I'm sorry if I was confused on that question. It's customary here at the City of Melbourne to include the dates of engagement period in the motion itself. I know you had a slide on when to expect the engagement. So can you give us dates for when it will go out to engagement? This motion before us tonight, which is to put this concept design out for public consultation. When will this engagement commence and for how long?
The engagement is to commence on the 8th of December and will extend out to the 8th of February.
Okay. Can I ask council business if you'd kindly amend that to put that in as an amendment? If we repeat the dates, the engagement would occur from the 8th of December
to the 8th of February.
To the 8th of February 2026. Is that okay, council business?
Sorry, point of order, Lord Mayor. If that's an amendment, I think it needs to be moved as an amendment.
I am asking if you take that down. I will move that in the amended motion that I propose to move. Thank you. The project in your report appears to have been renamed from Hawke Street Linear Park to Hawke Street Greening, which was unexpected. Is that significant?
No.
It's not significant. The project is still as intended previously.
Yes.
Thank you. The September resolution also asked for a plan to minimise the time between the opening of the tunnel, which is next month, and the commencement of construction of the Hawke Street Linear Park. I can't see in your report a plan for this. Can you give us any ideas of how you can accelerate the commencement of Hawke Street Linear Park?
So we're hoping to finalise the concept following engagement with the local community. We'll be bringing that concept back to council for consideration. Once that concept is endorsed by council, we'll be waiting for the finalisation of the monitoring period and hopefully move into a detailed design process at the end of the monitoring period. We expect that the monitoring will result in or the Hawke Street design will respond to the identified traffic patterns that have been reviewed during the monitoring period, and that no changes will be needed. We'll then work through a detailed design phase and a procurement phase before we can enter into design. So it's likely to be towards the end of 26 calendar year.
And would you say that plan minimises the time between the opening of the tunnel and the commencement of works?
That's the time that's available to us. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that question.
I'm quoting the resolution of Council in September. But moving on, in 2023, the concept design that was then endorsed for community consultation, we had a question from a West Melbourne resident who that night asked about whether the design was especially alert to the possibility that the final concept may conflict with the city's civil engineering. And our then Director of City Design assured us that night that the design took into account, quote, the known position of underground services. And I know you weren't working for the City of Melbourne then, but you have been trying to get to the bottom of this. How are you getting on? How is it that we didn't know about a high-pressure gas main under Hawke Street in 2023?
Yeah, I did review that transcript just to see if I could understand the response. The transcript actually referred to the design not conflicting with crossovers or civil engineering crossovers. Often the services are understood, but with further investigation, it was found that it was a high-pressure gas main which had significantly greater easement requirements, which limited the planting above it. So I'm yet to finalise and resolve how that occurred.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask Councillor Paul how many more questions you have?
I'm at liberty to ask questions at any time as long as I'm not interrupting anyone else.
Sure, not a problem.
I have only 2 left. I'm very nearly finished my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask why there are no signs in Hawke Street alerting the public or indeed the council as to the presence of high-pressure gas mains underground compared with other sites such as in Docklands where there are multiple signs alerting the public not to dig because there's a high-pressure gas main?
I'm not sure. Given it's a service authority, I'm happy to follow up on that.
Thank you. And finally, one of our submitters has pointed out tonight that council, I assume, has recently planted 8 street trees in Hawke Street. Are these trees inside the exclusion zone necessitated by the gas main?
I'd need to check on that, but I believe the trees were planted as part of the renewal program. So as a tree dies, these are existing tree plots, and trees were planted as part of that renewal program for tree planting. As part of a streetscape work, we engage with service authorities around the location of trees in that final design.
Sorry, are they inside the exclusion zone or outside?
I would need to check the specifics of the design.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Dr. Ball. I've got one question as well, Rick. The report from management refers to the works on Hawke Street commencing in the second quarter of 26-27. So that's, October, November, December 2026. That's like almost a year away from where we are today. Yes. We have previously talked in this chamber and at FMC about trying to get that project going as quickly as possible. I think the last time it came before us, we talked about it potentially commencing in early calendar 2026, March, April. Why has the timeline now slipped by a further 6+ months?
We are working to the requirements of DTP, which requested a pause on any works for a 6-month period following the opening of the tunnel. The tunnel is yet to open, so if we take 6 months from December, we're looking at that June date. at the completion of that, after that date, we will be required to finalise design of Hawke Street, whereby which we'll work through a fairly compressed design process. Once our concept is endorsed by council, that endorsement will occur in this financial year, which will allow us to move straight into that detailed design phase, subject to the outcome of the modelling.
All right, so is
monitoring, sorry.
Hawke Street a TAP project or a City of Melbourne project?
It's a TAP project.
Okay. And if the,
And it's both.
yeah, okay. And if the tunnel is scheduled to open very shortly, pre-Christmas is my understanding. So could we have the works commence mid-year, say June? At least that's shaving a couple of months off it, get this much-needed green space and traffic calming as quickly as possible to a community that's, crying out for it.
If there was funding allocated to the detailed design, and also we have to run through a procurement process. So there's probably about 3 to 4 months of detailed design. We need to finalise a concept. The concept is likely to be finalised after engagement with the community and when it comes back to council in February, March. Once we have a finalised or an endorsed concept by council, we can move into a detailed design phase. That will take us up to likely to the end of this financial year. There's currently no budget for detailed design within the TAP funding at this point in time. So we have notional funding supported by the CCTC committee for the delivery of Hawke Street, but there's no specific funding this financial year for the detailed design of Hawke Street. We would then need to move into, following detailed design, into a procurement phase, which will take 2 to 3 months. So at best, if there was funding available, we could have designs completed by June, and then there would be an engagement or a tender process for construction, which would be that 2 to 3 month period. So at best, following the June completion of design, subject to funding, at earliest, we would be able to start delivery around September, October.
All right. Are there any further questions? Councillor Raphael Camillo.
Lord Mayor, I'd like to ask why those questions just come, all this pressure to the council now. If the previous council, and I have a lot of councillors in here, they didn't raise this before and just raising now. Rick, you just have been not a long time in the job, but I think, can you clarify a little bit? I don't understand the urgent only now and not before. Maybe I could have not asked him for that. No, can I ask the other councillor about that or no?
No.
No? Okay, but I just want to put it to the public in here. I just don't understand what the urgency is now and not be.
Thank you, Councillor Camillo. So that's a very long and thorough list of questions we've gone through there. Let's move on to a motion and debate. Can I please request that a motion be presented to councillors? All right, I'm looking for, okay, is there an amended motion that is available?
I would like to move an amended
There we
motion,
go.
please, Lord Mayor.
There is the amended motion. Does that pick up the further amendment you just spoke of? My screen's...
Tremendous. Thank you, Council Business, very much.
Take that as moved.
I would like to move that. Thank you.
All right, looking for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Rouse. Back to you, Councillor Dr. Ball.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Rick, very, very much for tonight's meeting and Thursday night's meeting. We had a full house at a community meeting in West Melbourne on Thursday night, and one of the great benefits of that meeting was for both DTP and the City of Melbourne to hear the discontent in the community with how they've been treated and how this TAP suite of projects is progressing or failing to progress. So I want to thank Rick and note, of course, that he wasn't, as I mentioned, working for us at the time any of this began, or in fact the Hawke Street designs were first adopted in 2023. I note that the management report tonight before us, and Rick has confirmed, that the new traffic modelling conducted in July this year validated the conclusions of the original traffic modelling and the conclusions of the environmental effects statement, on the basis of which this council opposed the construction of the Westgate Tunnel, because of the predicted impacts in that environmental effects statement, the negative impacts on North and West Melbourne. Council's eventual support for the tunnel was predicated, conditional, on the TAP projects mitigating those traffic impacts and providing other added amenity, such as parkland along the Moonee Ponds Creek. Needless to say, the delays are a huge disappointment, most especially to the North and West Melbourne community, whose amenity and safety will suffer when the tunnel opens, according to confirmed modelling. So I really appreciate this report tonight, seeking to shed light on what has transpired and why we are where we are today. I have, in response to submissions from the public, added the blue text, which seeks further clarification, particularly in relation to the Hawke Street Linear Park and what can and can't be possible within constraints of the high-pressure gas main under the road. It further adds the dates that community engagement will be undertaken for the benefit of the public, and we want to make clear how either of these design options fulfills the West Melbourne structure plan. And I think that is a joint ambition of both levels of government and the community. Further, in clause 7, in response to community feedback, we heard a lot from the community on Wednesday night and in writing, concerns about safety, current safety, and already evident changes in traffic and what is to come. And I have asked in this clause for advice from management on lowering the speed limit in the section of Victoria Street between Curzon and Dryburgh Streets, which I acknowledge is state-controlled arterial road. So we would very much appreciate advice on that coming back to an FMC so that the community can have their input. And finally, to put as much information as we can in one place on our website for the benefit of the public, to have this portion of tonight's minutes also published in that same location on our website. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Rouse.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I'll keep my comments brief. I think Councillor Ball has already covered a lot of the key reasons why this is such a vital concern for the people of North and West Melbourne. I have heard lots of concerns from the local residents there as well. And I know for those watching at home, it feels like we're going through things very deeply, but it is very important we make sure we get a positive outcome for the people of North and West Melbourne. So I applaud Councillor Ball for her endeavour in that end. No further comments added. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Rouse. Any other councillors wish to speak to this? Councillor Griffiths.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. I'll be brief too, but I also want to thank the people of North and West Melbourne for their patience on this project more generally, but also on the many submissions that they have written for tonight and for the time that they've taken to meet with me, and I know some of the other councillors in recent days. I was out there last night on Victoria Street with some of the residents, hearing from them directly about their particular concerns at this point in time, and I hope that the motion that's before us goes some way to addressing those concerns. Obviously, Councillor Ball and others have given some airing there to the long history that's gone into where we find ourselves now, and I guess that the best that we can do is try to come up with the best possible process from this point forward, and I'm reassured to hear from Rick that that is the intention. This, along with many of the other open spaces that we plan, we really want to be of the highest quality. It's one of the things that, as a portfolio lead for environment, I'm particularly keen to see more open space, and for those open spaces to be exactly what the communities that they're located within are asking for, and so a process that's as transparent as the one that Councillor Ball has outlined here in the motion, I hope will go a long way to reassuring the people of North and West Melbourne, particularly around Hawke Street, that we're doing our very best to make sure that we're delivering on what they're asking for. I'll be supporting the motion tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll also keep it brief. I just want to highlight one concern I have, and it's with clause 1.7 there, the request for advice regarding the lowering of speed limits. And I bring this up based on what I think was a former request in another area within the municipality, that being East Melbourne, where I think we put together a report, a safety report on the road and traffic conditions of East Melbourne. And in that report, I recall that the local data, in fact, didn't display any dangers, and therefore there was no reason to recommend the lowering of speed limits. And yet there was a recommendation in the report to lower the speed limits when they just used generic data. So I do have my concerns with the advice we're getting here on these types of speed limits. And I wanted to register that concern.
Thank you, Councillor Guest. Any other councillors want to speak to this item? I'll briefly speak to it and say, unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the community meeting the other night, but I have received a detailed briefing on it. I recognise and understand there's a lot of community anger around this project. I also want to acknowledge and thank the community for their patience. The fact is, it has taken government too long to roll out the TAP projects, and this has been a failure on the part of government. I also want to once again remind people of the original sin here, and that is that the Westgate Tunnel project is ill-conceived and delivers vast volumes of traffic into densely populated inner suburban neighbourhoods. That doesn't work in any other cities around the world, and it's not going to work in Melbourne either. That's why the City of Melbourne voted against this project back in 2017. It was stated at the time that large-scale road expansions, especially elevated or motorway-style infrastructure, were at odds with Melbourne's long-term vision. Melbourne's prosperity and livability relied on connecting people to people, not funneling more vehicles into dense urban areas. So we at the City of Melbourne have been left with trying to ameliorate the impact of this huge road project on our local neighbourhoods and communities. The fact is we haven't covered ourselves in glory in how we have gone about that. I think it's important to put on the record that there has been intransigence at a state government level as well. And so we find ourselves where we are today, where the state government is frustratingly, but not unreasonably, saying let's wait till the traffic volumes settle so that the interventions we make are in fact the right ones that deliver the best outcomes for these neighbourhoods. I guess from a City of Melbourne perspective, we need to be vigilant and insist that from this point on, we get everything right and that we roll out these projects as quickly as possible and we deliver the right projects in the right areas. On that score, I do want to say that I think the Hawke Street options that are before us and will be going before the community do look good. A very significant increase in tree numbers, very significant increase in tree canopy, significant increase in green space. And so while the process has been a mess, while some of the engineering works have been laughable in the fact that we didn't identify a major gas pipe. Ultimately, what gets delivered on Hawke Street, I hope, will be a real exemplar of what we can do when we green inner city streets. We did a really good job on Roden Street. I hope we'll do an even better job on Hawke Street. In fact, I'm determined to make sure that that is the case. I thank you, Councillor Ball, for your suggestion on the extension of the 40-kilometre zone on Victoria Street. I think that's a very good idea. I'll certainly be voting for it shortly. And again, that's just one additional measure that we can hopefully put in place that will calm traffic, given what we know is coming when this project opens. And then finally, I do think the absolute highlight of the West Melbourne structure plan and what was proposed through the TAP is the conversion of Spencer Street North into a high street for West Melbourne. And I think we really need to hang on to that vision and ensure that it is delivered. Spencer Street North through West Melbourne could be a wonderful community high street for West Melbourne, just like Errol Street, just like Lygon Street, just like many other popular high streets throughout the inner city. And so I would like to see in this term of council us really push on and deliver that, as well as these other important TAP projects which are desperately needed to calm the traffic for what we know is coming. On that note, I will put the matter to the vote.
Can I ask a question, Lord Mayor?
You can indeed.
Just in the debate, we heard allegations of fudged reports. Can I just ask management to respond and give them the opportunity to respond to those comments?
Thank you, Councillor Rouse. Through you, Lord Mayor. We will, after this evening's meeting, go back and look at the commentary, and if there has been an accusation of that, we will investigate that and respond accordingly. Thanks.
All right, I will put this motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All right. Councillor Ball, Councillor Rouse, Councillor Liu, Councillor Scott, Deputy Lord Mayor Campbell, Councillor Louis, Councillor Camillo, Councillor Liu, Councillor Griffiths, Lord Mayor Rees, councillors against, Councillor Guest. All right, that motion is passed. We move on to our next agenda item, which is agenda item 6.2. Apologies, councillors. 6.2, commercial waste collector permits. I believe councillors would like a presentation in relation to
yes,
this
Lord Mayor,
item.
please.
Thank you, Councillor Camillo. Vince, are you going to give us this presentation? Over to you, please.
Just get the mic working. Okay, if we can go to the next slide, please. So there are several reasons why councils propose the introduction of the waste collector permit. We want to see a reduction in truck movements within the central city and a more efficient approach to waste collection. We know we have over 1,000 registered permit holders currently, and that some of the laneways have up to 11 different waste companies operating within them. This isn't the most efficient way of servicing businesses. If anything, it leads to higher waste management costs for businesses. With recent reports suggesting that businesses may face up to an additional cost of around $2,000, this figure highlights council's concern because a $3,750 permit to result in a $2,000 fee would mean that a single truck is only servicing a few businesses. This is highly inefficient. This change will also lead to a reduction in air pollution and CO2 emissions, which is a common topic raised by the entire community who participated in the Melbourne 50 Vision. We'll address noise issues, which is a major concern of residents and one of the most frequent complaints received when attending resident meetings. It will improve the overall amenity and safety that supports the reactivation of laneways for businesses, visitors and the greater community. And finally, generate revenue to offset part of the commercial waste costs, along with designing an equitable cost model for all ratepayers who currently contribute through the general rates to the $6 million operational expense of managing commercial waste within the city. So based on the amendment made at the council meeting on 30 June 2025, a request was made for management to conduct further industry stakeholder consultation on the implementation of council's waste collector permit and for management to report back to council by November to approve its programmed implementation plan and introduction. Next slide, thanks. Following on from the council meeting, a detailed communications and engagement plan was developed with the aim of gaining as much input as possible to help inform how the permit system would be implemented. In doing so, management developed and promoted a Participate Melbourne page targeted at waste collectors, businesses and residents. To support the launch of the page, direct communications occurred with greatest feedback being received from our business crawl and postcards, with just over 40 businesses responding and a total of 12 waste collector companies. As part of the engagement process and listening to industry, 2 externally facilitated workshops were also held, one with the Victorian Waste Management Association, who represented the majority of waste service providers, and one with the Australian Industry Group, who had 2 participating waste service providers. These workshops provided valuable insight as to how best to design the permit and led to several changes as outlined in this report. Next slide, please. Through the consultation process, we heard a variety of feedback and consolidated that feedback into the following areas. Insignificant time for budget integration. Fee structure penalises infrequent waste collectors. The current system penalises compliant waste collectors. There was a lack of clarity around waste definitions. Inefficiencies in the current digital permit system and how that may affect operations. Insignificant time and limited change in the communication for businesses, and there was a general concern around the fee. Having heard this feedback and following changes are being proposed as part of the implementation plan. So we're proposing that to move the start date from 1 January 2026 to 1 July 2026 and reduce the permit cost from $5,500 to $3,750 with additional sustainability discounts available on a sliding scale. An introduction of a different permit duration options being an annual, monthly, weekly or one-off permit which addresses the issue around the different types of waste use or waste services within the city. Introduce an accreditation system that incentivises companies that drive the right behaviour changes, so non-compliant waste collectors will no longer be issued permits. Specify the scope of what waste is within our definition of our activities local law. We want to improve our digital permit system in conjunction with waste collectors who are the ones who need to use the system. Development of a communications and education program with businesses to ensure they are getting the best services possible. And alternative fees and discounts have been modelled and integrated into the implementation plan, promoting sustainability and recycling. It's important to note that through this process, we recognise the importance of our industry partners, which are critical to the work we do and will be doing in the future. We are wanting to innovate and this demands change, and while change can be disruptive, it's disruption that clears the path for better outcomes, which we are seeking for the entire community. Next slide, please. So it's our recommendation for the implementation of these permits that they reflect what the discussions we've had with industry and what we've heard by the community, but still aim to set out what we're looking to do by introducing this permit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vince Macalino. Any questions for Vince? No? All right.
Question, Lord Mayor?
Yep.
Vince, how long this issue of having, like you just mentioned before, 11 trucks drive into a laneway? So you mentioned 11 different companies. What the impact to the infrastructure for the city of Melbourne, having 11 trucks driving a laneway in terms of noise, to be invite city for tourism, for residents, and the impacts of that, please?
Through you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Camillo. There's various impacts on the amenity. Obviously, the more truck movements within a certain space can create more risk. There's also more disturbances to the people that could live within those laneways or even the businesses operating within those laneways. We've seen some successful cases within the public realm where it has been consolidated, and the disruption on that area from a congestion perspective, traffic movement perspective, and also livability have improved. Thank you.
Just one more question, Lord Mayor. How many companies now driving into the city to collect rubbish? Private companies?
At the moment, we have registered over 1,000 permits on our system and around 60 different waste companies.
Okay, just to, thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. If there's no further questions, I'm going to request that an motion be put on the screen. I think there's an amended motion which is going to be moved by Councillor Camillo, and I understand Councillor Gladys Liu. All right, Councillor Camillo and Councillor Liu, I believe the amendment to the original motion is that there's now a 10% discount for low emission vehicles. The remainder of that remains the same, and there's a request for a report back after 12 months so that we can get a check-in as councillors as to how this new framework has progressed. On that basis, can I just confirm you're moving that motion?
Yes, correct, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Camillo. Councillor Liu, are you seconder? Great. All right, back to you, Councillor Camillo.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So this paper proposed some important updates on how we manage commercial waste in the central city. This has been a debate that I've been hearing from residents for more than they thought they had been debate for 30 years, because the state controls that, and that's a way for us to implement something to have better manage the way this collections is done by commercial waste. As the portfolio head for safety and cleaning, the goal for me is simple: to have a reliable and efficient waste service. I'd like to thank officers for their work on this. Following the June council meeting, they have consulted widely, and we have heard from waste collectors, business, residents, and industry groups. We have heard about the financial pressures, operational challenges, competition concerns, and sector-specific issues being faced. In response, we have dropped the fee for waste collection permits. Post-consultation, we're introducing incentives for environmentally positive practice and flexible permits. As mentioned there, we've increased the percentage. We are also targeting here years of debate, as I mentioned to you, and as Vince just mentioned, more than 60 different companies driving to the city, and sometimes in one laneway has 11 trucks. I don't think has cities around the world that manage waste like that, putting impact in infrastructure. So the approach is about balance, working with operators to help make Melbourne cleaner, safer, and more sustainable. So I commend the motion before us tonight. Back to you, Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Camillo. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I would also like to thank Councillor Camillo for his work on this, fantastic work. As the report noted, this is about ensuring we manage commercial waste in the central city in an efficient and cost-effective manner. I also would like to thank the officers led by Vince for their work on this. It is clear to me that we have consulted widely and have taken on board the feedback we have received. Changes such as varied permit options, discounts for environmental practices, and uplifting the online permitting system all assist in having an even more reliable and efficient waste service for our city. So I commend the motion before us tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Liu. Any other councillors wish to speak to this item? Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll also support the motion, but I just would like to say it's been heavy going getting from where this started, I would say around June 30th to here. The process, what we're trying to do here is worthy. Obviously, having 60 different firms and 1,000 different trucks coming in is problematic. I don't think anyone would argue about that. But we've had, firstly, how it was integrated into the budget is not something I'd like to see repeated. And secondly, the community consultation. I know, Lord Mayor, you and I have been involved in a few meetings on this, and hearing that I think only 8 businesses responded in our consultation process, given the feedback that I think you received and a number of us have received, just makes me nervous, and I know we need to improve in our community consultation processes. With all of that, though, I do still support the motion.
Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? I'll speak to it as well. I think we all, as councillors, acknowledge the problem. We hear it from our inner city community every day. The 1,000 waste trucks, the significant need to improve commercial waste collection arrangements in the city. I think it's also important that we acknowledge when we haven't got things right, and I think the way that this new framework went out as part of the budget could have been done a lot better. There was genuine surprise out there in the sector. We got that wrong. I also want to acknowledge that since then, there's been a lot of work that has occurred. There has been extensive industry consultation. I know industry won't, support wholeheartedly what's before us this evening. You wouldn't expect them to. There are some new charges involved. I think it needs to be said that there have been some significant movement around this framework, though, and the charges involved. Council currently spends $5 million per year managing commercial waste, and the proposed permit fee helps offset these costs and support future investment in the system. As a result of the changes that are occurring, we now estimate the revenue reduces to somewhere around 1.95 million. So we started with a cost recovery model of 5 million. We're about to vote on a framework which will deliver around 1.95 million. That still means there's going to be a lot of City of Melbourne subsidy going into commercial waste management in the City of Melbourne, but it does help take us forward in hopefully putting in place a better system that delivers better outcomes for the residents and visitors and users of the city, but also will develop a better framework for the good operators, and there are really good operators out there who can hopefully succeed and flourish. As a result of the consultation outcomes, we will be introducing an accreditation system, so only accredited vehicles can be issued permits and operate in the CBD. That's about lifting standards for the industry and for everyone. Enhancing the online permit system, which will include exploring transferable permits. I think that addresses some of the issues with the operators who have multi-vehicle fleets. Amend relevant local laws and permit conditions, provide education and guidance, and extend the commencement from January 26 to the 1st of July 26. And of course, seeing significant changes to the permit fees, which means that the revenue collected by the city is no longer anywhere near cost recovery, but does offset the significant cost to the city of administering commercial waste collection in our city. Finally, I do note that we are introducing some new incentives to encourage behaviour change with the waste collection vehicles, and in particular I note that we will now be offering a 10% discount for operators using low emission waste collection vehicles. Notably, the City of Melbourne has recently converted its cleaning vehicles to electric. It would be great to see low emission vehicles being used in waste collection in our city. It's just another way where we can lower emissions and improve amenity for the people who use our city. Finally, I do note that there's a 12-month review that's being written in here, a good move there by Councillor Camillo and Councillor Liu. That means that we're recognising this is not set and forget. We will require a 12-month review and we can see how these new arrangements have gone. All right, if there are not any further speakers to this item, we'll put the matter to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that carried unanimously. We move on to agenda item 6.3, which is the proposed council and committee meeting schedule for 2026. Do councillors want a presentation relating to this item? No. Could we request, please, that a motion be put to councillors? There it is. Do I have a mover for that motion? Thank you, Councillor Guest. I will second it. Back to you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think this item will take far less time than the first two. Next year's schedule is what we're talking about. It is very, very similar to this year's schedule in that the future Melbourne Committee meetings will be held on the first and third Tuesdays of each month, and council meetings will be scheduled on the last Tuesday of each month. There are two exceptions in there where people can read, but without further ado, I'm happy to move this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Guest. Nothing further to add. Any other councillors want to speak to this item? In that case, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour, raise your hand. I'm pleased to declare that carried unanimously. We move on to agenda item 6.4, Queen Victoria Market Precinct Renewal Program Quarterly Report. Does anyone want a presentation relating to this item? No. Then I will look for a mover. Thank you, Councillor Guest. I will be your seconder. Back to you, Councillor Guest.
Thank you again, Lord Mayor. Look, the Queen Victoria Precinct Renewal Program Quarterly Report can be distilled into between July and September. There was $16.6 million spent, which brings the total since 2013 on the project to $203 million. One could go through. The budget and scope are due for review, which I think is a good thing. In terms of what's currently happening, Gurrowa Place is expected to commence early next year. But I think the public will be most interested in what's going to happen going forward, and rather than what's already happened. So I'm glad to see that there is a review, because what I hope for most when it comes to this project, that we're not sitting here in the years to come saying that we're now up to spending $400 million. But with that, I'm happy to move this motion, as it is just noting what has happened this quarter.
Thank you, Councillor Guest. I will also say that as the seconder, I had the opportunity to visit the construction works the other day. I went on a tour of the new 7-level trader shed. I can report that the city is making solid progress on that project, with the installation of services now underway across the 4 basement levels, and the above ground structural works advancing, and trader engagement has also commenced around the future use of that trader shed. So we look forward to continuing to make solid progress there with QVM renewal. Would any other councillors like to speak to this motion? No. In that matter, I'll put the item to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. I declare that carried unanimously. We move on to agenda item 6.5, Citywide Service Solutions Pty Ltd annual report. Would councillors like a presentation in relation to this item? No. All right. In that case, I will request a motion be put before us. There it is. Do we have a mover for that motion? Thank you, Councillor Guest. I will second it. Back to you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As you can see, the motion is to note the audited annual report for the year 2024-25. The trading results for Citywide can be seen as after tax a loss of $2.3 million, which is down from the previous year, which was a loss of $3.4 million. And this has come around as a result. Revenues have gone up by 13.1%, which is less than the increase in expenses. Expenses did go up by 11.7%. So yes, trends are occurring in the right way. There's obviously more work to be done at Citywide. There is just one thing I would note, and that is the release of a dividend of $17.5 million when there is in fact an operating loss at the company. I'm not going to say that we shouldn't adopt these accounts, but I do think that's something that should be reviewed going forward, and I wouldn't like to see it happen again.
Thank you, Councillor Guest. I have nothing to add to your insightful comments. Would any of the councillors like to speak to this item? No. In that case, I'll put the matter to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that carried unanimously. We move on to agenda item 6, revised CEO employment and remuneration policy and terms of reference for the CEO Employment Matters Advisory Committee. Can I please request that?
Lord Mayor, if I might, I'd like to declare a material conflict of interest in accordance with Section 128 of the Local Government Act, as this matter directly impacts the employment and remuneration of my position at Council. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, CEO. We'll give you a moment. All right. Would councillors like a presentation in relation to this item? No. In that case, I will request that a motion be put before us with a minor tweak. I am happy to move that motion. I'm looking for a councillor to second it. Thank you, Councillor Philip Leilu, who is a diligent member of the CEO Employment Matters Committee. I'll now speak to this item. The City of Melbourne has created and adopted its CEO employment and remuneration policy back in the 13th of December 2021, as required under our Local Government Act 2020. A further review of the policy was approved in 18th of December 2023, and under the current policy, Council must review it within 12 months of the new Council being elected. That is what we are now doing. The governance team advises that the policy presented today meets all requirements of the Act and is based on a sector-wide template developed by our good friends at Maddox Lawyers. The policy also aligns with the CEO's current employment contract. Management recommends that Council approve the updated CEO employment matter REM policy, along with the terms of reference for the Chief Executive Officer Employment Matters Advisory Committee, and I concur. Councillor Philip Leilu, nothing to add. Would any other councillor like to speak to this matter? Councillor Dr. Olivia Ball.
Is it an advisory committee or is it just called committee? I've always thought it was just committee.
Liz, are you able to clarify that for us? Or maybe another member of the committee?
COEMC.
I believe Councillor Dr. Ball is correct.
Oh, okay, well picked up. So let's just make that Employment Matters Committee. Good pick up. I'm going to take that minor amendment as moved and seconded. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that carried unanimously. Can we please invite our CEO to return to the chamber? And we will move on to agenda item 6.7, post-travel report business mission to North Asia, September 2025. Would councillors like a presentation in relation to that item? No. In that case, I will request that a motion be put before the council. I'm looking for a councillor to move that motion. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Looking for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Rouse, as seconder. All right. Back to you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's a great delight to move this motion, which concerns Council's North Asia Business Mission, which undertook visits to priority partner cities in China and Japan. And it was anchored around key market events, including the 45th anniversary of the Melbourne-Tianjin Sister City Relationship, the Business Partner Cities Conference, and the 2025 Osaka World Expo. It also included some incredibly high level civic meetings, including with the Mayor of Beijing, the Mayor of Osaka, and the Governor of Tokyo. Those meetings alone would have provided an excellent reason for Council to be travelling to further those relationships, but indeed so much more was achieved than that. There were significant efforts to attract international talent and global investment, which are key actions under Council's endorsed economic development strategy and also our 4-year Council plan. I'm pleased to see this report clearly setting out both the short-term and the long-term gains we can see for our city as a result of the North Asia mission. It's worth saying this wasn't just a council mission, this was a Melbourne mission, including 25 delegates from 18 businesses and institutions. As a result of the work of those delegates, 14 commercial agreements across China and Japan were secured, resulting in at least $28.4 million in trade outcomes. In addition to that, there are 6 investment leads secured, which is forecast to generate over $53 million in economic impact, and also 5 international headquarters secured to open in Melbourne. Perhaps pleasingly, it's worth noting that the cost of the mission came in significantly under budget, while the economic benefits significantly exceeded those that were considered at the time the mission was proposed. This is nothing short of an extraordinary return for Melbourne on the investment of this travel. I'd like to thank the councillors who attended. The mission was led by the Lord Mayor, but also Councillor Gladys Liu, Councillor Phil Liu, and Councillor Kevin Louie. It is clear from the mission report how hard you all worked, and of course to Mark Cochrane-Holly and his team for the outstanding work in putting together this mission. I encourage anyone who hasn't to read the report in full, and in particular it is worth seeing some of the engagements, including the Tianjin River Light Show to celebrate the 45th anniversary of the Sister City Relationship, which not only reflects very well on the importance of sister city relationships, but also might provide some very unique and interesting ideas for how we can further our plan to light up Melbourne. I commend this report to my councillor colleagues.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Councillor Andrew Rouse.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And I think the Deputy Lord Mayor has covered all the important points there. I will, however, add in that I know that on the mission there was an accompaniment of Made in Melbourne startups looking to expand globally. And speaking with them on their return, they had glowing things to report on relation to their experience and the opportunities that have been presented to them globally. I would also like to show my appreciation to Mark Cochrane-Holly and the team for the hard work that they put in to organising these sorts of missions and missions that run like clockwork and that are very exhausting for the councillors on there, as you have already spoken about, Deputy Lord Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Rouse. Councillor Kevin Louie.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I do love a report that's nearly over 50% pictures, and certainly the picture does tell 1,000 words. So could I just pick on some of the figures that the Deputy Lord Mayor just went on and add on that over hitting the ground, 10 days on the ground, 6 cities, 2 countries, 57 official meetings, as the Deputy Lord Mayor's identified, but also over 170 tailored networking meetings across biotech, med health, education, and also urban design as well for some of our architectural practices. But most importantly, I think as a snapshot, that some of the delegates that were also part of the delegation were from the Australian Industry Group. We had the National CEO of the Australian China Business Council, Vice Chancellor from RMIT University. We had a director from Boxu Institute, which also has a campus here in Flinders Lane. EBOS, a $12 billion pharmaceutical giant based in Docklands. We have one of our largest architectural practices, Dana Corker Marshall, which are also part of it, and some of our leading clinical trial specialists, such as Adjuncta, Nucleus Network, 360, Biolab, Child Key, Acclime, etc., plus other hospitality businesses and financial services groups that were also part of the delegation. But I also like to finish off by thanking also Mark Holly, Francis as well, Francis Fu, Bonnie Xiao, who heads our office in Tianjin, Terry Wu is here, Lucy Ning, who's in Tianjin, Jane Chu here, Shane McElroy, who's based here in our international team, but also can I also put a very strong thank you to our council liaison officers who spent a lot of time coordinating the mission in our diaries and within our work. So and also can I thank my fellow Traveller colleagues for the support that on the mission. No mean feat because the number of engagements, the number of cities on its own, anyway, deserves, and also over weekends as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Do any other councillors want to speak to this item? I'll briefly say I want to say thank you to councillors and officers who helped make this trip possible, in particular Councillor Kevin Louis, who is a veteran of engagement in Asia, Councillor Philip Leilu, who brought his extraordinary expertise to great effect on the mission, and Councillor Gladys Liu, who was such a dynamo and helped at every turn along the way. Also to the officers, Mark Cochrane Holly, Francis Fu, Jane and others, thank you so much. It was nothing short of epic, this business mission, in 10 days covering so many cities. I think there's something like 30 mega cities in the world. We did 5 of them in that period. Also meeting with people like the Mayor of Beijing, the Mayor of Tianjin, the Mayor of Chengdu, the Mayor of Osaka in Japan, and of course the Governor of Tokyo. The level of access that we were able to attain and the quality of the meetings was absolutely extraordinary, and this was a mission that delivered results. 6 investment leads established, creating 73 jobs, over $50 million in economic impact. And of course there was also the visit to Muji in Japan, and of course we have since learned that they will open their new flagship Australian store in Melbourne. A great win for our city. So exciting. So all up, nothing short of epic. And again, I put on the record my thanks to the councillors and the officers involved. Councillor Philip Leilu.
Just very briefly, Mark, it would be great if you can also pass our thanks to the consulates, both the Chinese consulate and also the Japanese consulate, for organising all the meetings. It's by no easy feat, and the fact that they have went out of their depth to help us organise those meetings. Please pass on our thanks to the consulates.
All right. Are there any other speakers to this item? In that case, I'll put the matter to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. All right. Councillor Ball, Councillor Rouse, Councillor Liu, Councillor Scott, Deputy Lord Mayor, Councillor Louis, Councillor Camillo, Councillor Leilu, Councillor Griffiths and Lord Mayor Rees. Any councillors voting against? No. Any councillors abstaining? Councillor Guest. All right, that motion is passed. We move on to agenda item 6.8, post-travel report, Councillor Rouse, World Top Performing Incubator Forum, Shanghai, China, September 2025. Can we please put a motion before councillors? That is the one. I am happy to move that motion, looking for a seconder. Thank you, DLM. Well, look, let me just say well done to Councillor Rouse for seizing this opportunity to promote Melbourne's reputation as a great place to do business. I've seen you in action, Councillor Rouse, and I know you would have hit the ground hard, making the most of every opportunity for Melbourne and to cement our status as a serious international option for investment and startups. I know your passion in that field. We are Australia's premier life sciences hub and home to almost 3/4 of the country's major biomedtech companies. Our digital health sector is also extraordinary and growing, and with international engagements such as these, we're able to seize the opportunity to share the good news stories about our city and take advantage of new opportunities for Melbourne. So thank you, Councillor Rouse, for your hard work and for delivering for us on this visit to Shanghai. Deputy Lord Mayor Campbell.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd echo all of your comments and also congratulate and thank Councillor Rouse for representing the City of Melbourne at the World Top Performing Incubator Forum in Shanghai. It had over 500 participants from 30 countries discussing over 100 projects. I'd particularly like to congratulate him for delivering the keynote speech on fundamental innovation, translation in life sciences, and his ability to highlight on a global stage Melbourne's strength as a startup hub through initiatives such as the Fisherman Ben's Digital Innovation Challenge, as well as promoting our Melbourne Advantage Economic Development Strategy. I note that as a result of Councillor Rouse's participation, he met with Trevor Brennan from the Cambridge Innovation Centre in Boston, has now secured a visit from Mr Brennan to Town Hall in Melbourne next month. I, for one, am very excited by this opportunity to reignite our city relationship with Boston as a result of Councillor Rouse's attendance at that event, and so that we can build on our common shared strengths such as innovation and education. But in closing, I'd like to thank Councillor Rouse for his ongoing hard work and his advocacy, particularly in the innovation space.
All right. Thank you very much, Deputy Lord Mayor. Does anyone else want to speak to this item? Councillor Rouse.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you for the kind comments from the Lord Mayor and the Deputy Lord Mayor. Look, it was a fantastic experience to showcase Melbourne on the world stage. I'll note that the Cambridge Innovation Centre in Boston are largely the people responsible for building out Kendall Square, also known as the most innovative square mile on the planet in our sister city in Boston. The keynote was fantastic, relating to something that we do very well here in Melbourne, life sciences, and of course being able to speak about everything that is covered in our economic development strategy, very much pushing the Melbourne advantage. Unfortunately, whilst on the mission, I did get stranded by the typhoon, but there was lots of support from back here at home to ensure that I could get home nice and safely. And it's absolutely phenomenal to see how other countries are performing in this space, and very much one of the major key takeaways for this, as outlined in the report, is that China gets on with it quickly and it gets it done. But they're also very good at taking their innovation and getting that pushed into the national agenda and getting that pushed into the national narrative to ensure that it is seen as an aspirational pathway, and that is something that we very much can be learning from, and that very much is the core of our new economic development strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Rouse. Any other speakers to this item? In that case, I'll put the matter to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that carried unanimously. All right, we move on to agenda item 7, general business. And there is 3 items of general business. The first of those, 7.1, notice of motion, Councillor Dr Owen Guest, Emergency Services and Volunteers Fund, implementation and impact of levy. I believe there is a slightly amended version of the motion which Councillor Guest is proposing to move. Can we please put that up on the screen? All right, I believe that is it. Yep. Councillor Guest, are you happy with that motion?
I am, yes.
All right, we'll take that as moved. And who is your seconder? Councillor Camillo. Back to you, Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I would just note the amendment there, which acknowledges that the letter sent by you on the 1st of October 2025, also registering your objection to the Emergency Services and Volunteer Fund levy. But I think we need to broadcast this very loudly and very clearly. Here at the Melbourne City Council, and in fact any council, we are not here to be the debt collectors for the debt-riddled state government. If the state government wants to raise taxes on the citizens of Melbourne and Victoria, they should do it themselves. Too often, governments and councils seek to raise revenue to finance their follies. If only they could put such energy and competence into saving taxpayers' money as they can to increasing revenues via these taxes. For the Victorian State Government, who has failed to deliver any project on time or on budget, that has failed to adequately fund our police force and keep its citizens safe, to try and rectify their problems using either cost-shifting or revenue-raising mechanisms at local government level is, to say the least, galling in the extreme. Not only that, they do this at a time when Victorians are struggling across the board. To try and put levies up in such a way is disrespectful in any way you look at it, and in no way should we at the Melbourne City Council endorse this levy, either in itself, and we should not be aiding and abetting its collection. That is the reason for this motion, Lord Mayor and people of Melbourne.
Thank you, Councillor Guest. Councillor Camillo.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In seconding this motion, I want to emphasize that our concerns about the Emergency Service and Volunteers Fund levy are not about questioning the value of emergency service or the volunteers who support them. We all recognize the critical role they play in keeping Victorians safe. The issue here is the way the state government has chosen to implement and collect this levy, an approach that places an unreasonable and inequitable burden on local councils and ultimately in our communities. Since the introduction of the emergency levy early this year, councils across Victoria have been left to shoulder the administrative, financial and operational load of collecting a state-imposed charge. This has come without adequate consultation, without sufficient resourcing, and without the clarity that our residents rightly expect about how this levy is used and why costs have increased. Just giving an example here, this council has applied a discount for the rate, but our ratepayers could not enjoy that and accuse us that the rates went up, and we were trying to help the cost of living. Local governments already operate under tight financial constraints, and we work hard to deliver essential service that our communities rely on every day. Asking councils to act as tax collectors for the state without proper funding or transparency is another example of cost shifting and sets a troubling precedent and adds pressure to already stretched budgets and staff. I fully support the collective advocacy being led by MEV and the M9 councils. Their work has made clear that this situation is unfair, unsustainable, and contrary to the principles of good governance. The state government must now take responsibility either by abandoning this levy in its current form and finding a more equitable funding mechanism, or by creating a transparent system in which collects administers in own levy directly. Our communities deserve clarity, fairness, accountability. These motions calls on the state government to deliver exactly that. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Camillo. Are there any other councillors who want to speak to this item? No, in that case, I'll put the matter to the vote. All those... Oh, Councillor Rouse.
Just quickly, Lord Mayor, just clarifying that the letter that you've sent already on behalf of the M9, which is a bigger organisation of councils than just the City of Melbourne, covers effectively everything already in this motion?
It does. It's in all substantive ways the same letter.
Okay. Then as my comments, can I just ask all of our councillors we stop self-grandiosing and get on with doing good things for the people of Melbourne?
All right. Any other councillors wish to speak to this item? No? All right. I'll put the matter to the vote. All those raise their hands. All right. Lord Mayor Rees, Councillor Rouse, Councillor Liu, Councillor Scott, Deputy Lord Mayor, Councillor Louis, Councillor Guest, Councillor Camillo, Councillor Liu, all those against, Councillor Ball, Councillor Griffiths. That motion has passed. All right, we move on to 7.2, notice of motion. Councillor Raphael Camillo, funding support towards the Pellegrinis documentary.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Or is they got to put the motion?
Yes, could I request, please, that the motion be put there? It's the one tweak in it. Are you going to move that one, Councillor Camillo?
Yep.
Thank you. Moved. Do you have a seconder?
Yes.
Councillor Scott, thank you. Back to you, Councillor Camillo.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And I also like to thank Chris Trum for his written submission tonight on this. As Chris highlights in his comments, Pellegrini is a much-loved institution of Melbourne and is part of the fabric of Melbourne. In fact, for more than 30 years, it has been an iconic meeting place for locals, migrants, artists, intellectuals, and visitors, and the legacy of its late owner, Sister Malaspina, remains deeply treasured by Melbournians. What these motions try to bring? I went myself to watch in Williamstown the first showing of the documentary, and I was very moved with the story and understand the importance of an institution like that it doesn't matter who is the owners of the restaurant, but it's got to be part of the fabric of the City of Melbourne. So, and as I put in the motion in there, we try to support the brave, I use the word brave because they're brave to producers that never did that before, and they're organizing a documentary, and they gotta take just the legacy of the history, promote tourism, and our values a lot of history in preserving the history. So that contribution there, we were asking that would be helping further promote this move, not only in Melbourne, but it's going to be Australian-wide and future overseas. So the film captures the legacy in a powerful and enduring way. Through archival materials, heartfelt interviews, and truthful cinematic storytelling, this film explores Pellegrini's cultural impact, its contribution to Melbourne's hospitality landscape, and of course the lasting influence of Sister Malaspina. It is also beautiful, promotes our great city. However, producing this documentary has required significant resource for archival, historical, license to professional cinematographic, sound mixing, color, grading, and more. So the costs were not fully anticipated, but now they need to promote very well to support all the investments that these producers put on that. So I believe this modest contribution of $5,000 that will have the logo City of Melbourne in the movie will further help to further promote this movie and also promote Melbourne as a tourism Australian-wide and overseas. So the City of Melbourne reputation is bringing the City of Melbourne reputation from excellence in filming and television production. It speaks to itself, and I'm very proud to move this motion before us tonight. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Camillo. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Tonight we have the opportunity to provide additional promotional support to a project that has been a passion project, really, for the producers. which came with little financial support from government, state or local, or commercial sponsors. Whilst relatively modest in budget for a cinematic production, it does carry enormous cultural weight. It tells a story that is not just about a cafe, but is actually a story about Melbourne itself. Pellegrini's Espresso Bar is more than a business. It is an iconic Melbourne experience that I know many of us in this room have actually experienced. A place woven into the very fabric of our city's identity. Since opening its doors in 1954, an incredible achievement in and of itself, Pellegrini's helped define what Melbourne's cafe culture would become. It was one of the first to bring authentic Italian espresso to our streets, shaping a hospitality scene that is today recognised around the world. We are a city of coffee. For generations of Melburnians and for countless visitors to Melbourne, Pellegrini's has been a constant, a place where immigrants found familiarity and community, where friendships formed across the famous marble counter, and where the city's now famous love affair with coffee truly began. This is not just a venue, it is a living heritage. Its story is also a story of people. Pellegrini's has been home to long-serving staff whose dedication demonstrates the deep sense of loyalty and community that this institution fosters. It has contributed to local employment, supported neighbouring businesses, and strengthened the cultural heartbeat of the City of Melbourne. And importantly, Pellegrini's remain a tourist magnet. Visitors seek it out precisely because it represents something very uniquely Melbourne, a blend of tradition, authenticity, and hospitality that cannot be replicated elsewhere. It is the kind of place that gives our city its character, its warmth, and its global reputation as a culinary capital. Supporting this project financially and in kind means supporting the preservation and celebration of that legacy. It means recognising the role that small but significant institutions and businesses play in telling the story of Melbourne, a story of migration, creativity, resilience, and shared identity. We need to make sure this story is told as loud and as wide as possible, and this motion ensures the City of Melbourne contributes to that objective. I am delighted to second this motion and thank Councillor Camillo for bringing it to us, and I hope we do embrace the chance to support the storytelling of one of the true cornerstones of our city's cultural and hospitality landscape.
Thank you, Councillor Scott, for that contribution. Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I have a couple of questions for management before I speak to the motion, if I may. Possibly Mans or whoever wishes to field this question, wanting to refer to council policy established in 2020 regarding uses, permissible uses of the discretionary fund. It says that only items ineligible for funding from existing council-approved grant programs may receive funding from this fund. So could you tell us, in the hypothetical, would this film have been eligible for an existing council grant program?
Thank you for the question, Dr. Ball, and through you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Dr. Ball, as you're aware, we do have a creative framework fund for grants. If the makers of the documentary had applied for the fund before the documentary was made, they would maybe have been considered for that creative framework.
So they would be eligible?
They might have been eligible for the production of the documentary.
Yes.
However, given the motion on the screen is for the promotion of the documentary, which falls more into the commercial realm, they would not have been eligible for any creative funding.
I see. And do we know whether the producers of this film did apply for funding through any of our
As
grants
far as I'm
programs?
aware, Councillor Dr. Ball, we did not receive an application for a grant.
Thank you very much. And maybe this could be a question for Rebecca or whoever you wish. Can you estimate for us the value of the promotion and marketing that the City of Melbourne is expected to provide to this particular documentary, and I note has already started promoting?
Thanks for the question. Through you, Lord Mayor, we estimate the value of the promotion, given the scale and reach of our What's On channels, to be in the order of $30,000. Value in kind.
In kind support, $30,000. Thank you very much. I'm happy to speak to the motion now if...
You may. Speak away, Dr. Ball.
Thank you very much. I'm concerned about this motion because public funding requires a proper assessment process and should be subject to competitive grant funding processes based on established criteria that is a transparent and fair process for all applicants. The producers of this film did not apply for an arts grant in the usual way, so we don't know if it would have met the criteria or won funding in a competitive context. So I think making an exception such as this is proposed sets a poor precedent, and I think it would be unjustified for council to make this cash grant, especially in the light of the six-fold in-kind contribution we already have commenced making in terms of marketing this film, and it's unfair to those applicants who have followed the required processes. So I'll not be able to support this motion. I wish to note, of course, that none of this is a reflection on the film itself, which I've yet to see, nor on its makers, nor on its subject matter, all of which I heartily agree with the high praise and significance accorded to the subject matter already from previous speakers, and I wish the film every success.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Would any other councillors like to speak to this? Councillor Andrew Rouse.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I agree with everything that Councillor Scott and Councillor Camillo have said. Pellegrini's absolutely is a treasure in Melbourne, and if you'll indulge me, I went to Pellegrini's when I was a young boy with my grandfather. It was always used as a treat in our family. For an A+ on a test, you would go to Pellegrini's for gelato. However, as everyone in this chamber knows, the only thing that I like more than a watermelon granita from Pellegrini's is, of course, good governance. And unfortunately, the processes for accessing the discretionary fund are, to my view, black and white. This speaks to a motion that was passed by the Future Melbourne Committee where they considered the process for funding items of a discretionary nature and resolved that from the 31st of July 2013, only the following items would be considered. Those items that are received with a lead time of greater than 90 days to the date of the event, except for table sponsorships, and those items ineligible for funding from existing council-approved grant programs. The briefing paper that was provided to me shortly before this meeting also covers the arrangements where perhaps councillors might find opportunities outside this scope. Those include councillors discuss the request with colleagues at councillor only. Unfortunately, that did not happen in advance of this motion being put to the agenda. If councillors support the request, it can be referred to the General Manager, City Economy and Activation for review against the criteria. Management will then prepare a report for consideration at the subsequent council meeting. So unfortunately, as a Treasurer of Melbourne, under the current motion on the screen, I don't think we as a council can support that at all. However, Pellegrini's is a true treasure of Melbourne, and therefore I would like to foreshadow that in the event that the motion on the screen does not pass, that I will move a second motion that would change 1.3 to include $30,000 of in-kind sponsorship and amends 1.5 to note that it is in-kind sponsorship, not in-kind and financial. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Rouse. Would any of the council like to speak to this item? Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I'd also commend Councillor Scott and Camillo. I think they've said the appropriate words when it comes to Pellegrini's. But speaking of grandstanding, I do commend, and I hope this is a watershed moment, that this request is being made in the open forum of this council, which is where these sort of requests should be made, so we can all look our community in the eye when we do so. I don't usually speak at length, but when I do, yes, it is often about transparency, it is often about balanced budgets, and it is often about showing respect for both ratepayers and taxpayers' money. And I'm very sorry if that sounds like grandstanding.
All right, thank you for that contribution. Any other councillors want to speak to this item? In that case, we'll put Councillor Rouse.
Just a question to management, noting that this is based upon a decision of the FMC from 12 years ago, and I think there was only one person present in the room tonight that was in the room on that night. Two? Okay, who was the second? Yeah, Kevin, that was... that was the
yes,
one person
12, sorry.
I was alluding to. Can management update if they believe there is any subsequent decision of council that would supersede this motion, noting that when I asked for the current or most up-to-date rules, this is what was provided.
Look, thank you, Councillor Rouse, for that question, and through you, Lord Mayor, I guess my response is that it is open to the council to consider this motion, Councillor Camillo's motion. They can take into account the previous motions of council and still have the authorisation to make this decision and support this motion. The previous FMC motion doesn't negate the ability for council to make a different decision this evening. But I'm happy to confirm with our Acting Director of Governance. So we're just indicating that we may need to look it up, but it is possible for council to make a decision this evening that supersedes the motion that was carried at the FMC meeting 12 years ago. If I understand the question correctly.
Sorry, not supersedes, but would be contra to the motion passed 12 years ago. Does not supersede the motion passed, but would be against the policy that was established 12 years ago.
Councillor Rouse, I don't have that motion in front of me and I haven't had the opportunity to review it in advance of this meeting, so I can't answer that question explicitly.
All right. In any case, I believe your advice says we can still proceed, notwithstanding that motion 12 years ago, but thank you for your detailed forensic analysis on that one. All right, I'm going to put the matter to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Okay, Lord Mayor Rees, Councillor Gladys Liu, Councillor Mark Scott, Deputy Lord Mayor Candle, Councillor Louis, Councillor Guest, Councillor Camillo, Councillor Liu. All those against, Councillor Rouse, Councillor Ball, Councillor Griffiths. That motion has passed. All right, we move on to agenda item 7.3, notice of motion. Councillor Philip Leilu, revised City of Melbourne position regarding medically supervised injecting services. Can we request that the motion please be put up on the screen so we can see it? I think there might be a minor tweak. Yep.
Yep, that's fine.
That's fine. So moved. And is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Gladys Liu. Back to you.
Lord Mayor, if I may, under Rule 37.1, I would like to pass a procedural motion to refer this item to the next FMC meeting. This is for a couple of specific reasons, and without speaking to the item, but to explain the reason why. This strategic decision is of a nature of public health that is undeniable, given that it asks the Lord Mayor or CEO to write to the Minister of Health. We have seen an overwhelming interest by the public that is noted by In the last couple of hours, we've had over 150 pages of submissions from the public. Now, no councillor would have the time or ability to read that in such a short time, and therefore, under the Councillor Code of Conduct 1A(c), 2B, 41A and B, it is unrealistic that we have taken those inputs into account. For an item of public health, it is self-evident that it should be that the public view and the public dialogue should be taken into account, and therefore I would like to move a motion of referral to an FMC meeting so this can be done in a public, transparent and open fashion.
All right, so I'm taking that as a procedural motion.
Correct.
Do you have a seconder for that procedural motion? Councillor Ball. All right, because it is a procedural motion, we don't have a debate, but you've stated the reason. Thank you. All right, I will put that procedural motion to a vote of councillors. The vote is, should this item be deferred for 1 week? All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Griffiths, Councillor Ball, Councillor Rouse. All those against. Deputy Lord Mayor Campbell, Councillor Scott, Councillor Liu, Councillor Louis, Councillor Guest, Councillor Camilla, Councillor Liu, Councillor Rees. That procedural motion has failed. So I believe the floor is back with you, Councillor Leilou, as the mover of the substantive motion.
Sure, thank you. First and foremost, I want to thank all the submitters, both for supporting, not that many, as in supporting the motion. And thank you means quite a lot to me, because given all the other different people I've spoken to. But also I want to thank those who have sent in objecting to this particular motion. And I note and appreciate the very emotional, both and also the amount of evidence and information that is put in there. However, a lot of the emails and the information that is provided does not provide what the impact is to the area that it is in. It doesn't actually include the impact to the business owners who have suffered mentally. It doesn't, recognises the people who have been the victims of crime, and also it doesn't have any of the information that is around the people who have innocently just bipartisan, absolutely have nothing to do with it, being affected by it. You go down Victoria Street and you see what it was previously, and it's an absolute shame, and I don't want that in Melbourne. So to provide a better background, this has been a debate that has been happened in City of Melbourne ever since the injecting room was formed in Richmond previously. Now, I know the debate we've always had. We've always talked about the fact that we want it next to a hospital, we want it next to, provided care. There was 3 sites that have been in City, Drill Hall, there was one around potentially Burke Street, and potentially even in the, I think, Flinders Street at some point as well, which is now going to be another different mode of community health hub. So the interest is definitely there, and we are about to go into a state government election, and we are about to take a City of Melbourne's advocacy and partnership to them, and in this term of council, I definitely want, and given that we have a new council group, so I think it's one that we need to test the views and of different people here who has always not been able to have a chance to vote on it. But here is what I just wanted to say that is, this is something that this is just a very much administrative position that is taken by council. We're not looking to create a new injecting room or asking for it. We are just changing the City of Melbourne position. And I know that some people aren't able to accept that, and they are more than free to bring their own motion forward next week if they want to. I also will be saying that they are more than happy to have all the evidence. But for me, this is something that I want to change a position on because we have a new council group and new councillor. So based on that, I'm not going to say any more apart from the fact that I've been around it for too long. I've seen the good side story, the bad side story, and I just don't want Melbourne to ever end up like what has been in Victoria Street in Richmond. And I want Melbourne to thrive and not become a drug capital of Australia.
All right, thank you, Councillor Liu. We've got a seconder in Councillor Gladys Liu. Did you have a point of order or a question?
I had a question for Councillor Liu, if that's appropriate at this point in time. I can wait, but I thought given that he was on the floor, that would be
Look, you
time.
can ask a question at any time, and so I'll take your question, Councillor Griffiths.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. I just wanted to clarify, given that the opening statement of this motion is quite broad about the establishment of a medically supervised injecting service is not supported in any form, and wanted to ask Councillor Liu whether that also covered hydromorphone being administered by injection as a treatment.
Through you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Griffith. I did actually think about it, but also I did note that management did provide an advice on the fact that that it doesn't qualify as part of it. I do have a particular view on it, and personal view. However, in regards to this, I decided not to include that. So it's purely on the medical supervised injecting room, and that service is not included in this particular motion, if that satisfies your answers.
All right, Councillor Gladys Liu.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I would like to thank Councillor Philip Liu for moving this motion tonight. As portfolio lead for community health and city services, I can see how complex this issue is. And I would also like to thank the submitters who have written to us with their views. I have been very active in the last year as the councillor for City of Melbourne, going out there, meeting people, attending events, talking to and listen to businesses, residents, students, visitors coming to the City of Melbourne. And I know, and I've heard their views as well. We have submitters actively writing to us, but at the same time, I have been out there hearing from a lot of people, in particular, those who don't have strong English. And fortunately enough, I can speak Mandarin and Cantonese, so I have been able to hear their views as well. People struggling with addiction deserve our care. However, as this motion before us notes, I would like to see a greater emphasis on drug rehabilitation programs that support these people in need. This motion before us tonight is about sending a clear message to the state government that having a medically supervised injection service in the City of Melbourne that is close to our businesses, residents, visitors, is not supported in any way. Rather, I would like to support people who need the help, the appropriate drug rehabilitation programs. So that's why I'm here seconding this motion, and I would love to have my colleagues' support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Liu. Other councillors? Councillor Andrew Rouse.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to be very clear from the outset, this debate is not about being for or against drug use. And speaking frankly, the motion on the screen is probably one of the most embarrassingly least evidence motions I've seen in this chamber. If council wants to have a serious conversation about drugs, harm and public safety, fantastic, let's do that. But this motion does not do that. It waves away decades of evidence, contradicts our own strategic documents and presents assumptions as facts. And council deserves better than that, the City of Melbourne deserves better than that, and the people of Melbourne deserve better than that. This is not about safe injecting rooms, it is about whether council makes decisions that are evidence-based, consistent, and align with our statutory obligations under the Local Government Act, the Councillor Code of Conduct, and our own council plan. Unfortunately, this motion fails on all of those fronts. The motion asserts that a medically supervised injecting service would have a potential adverse impact on safety and amenity. This statement is not supported by any credible evidence in Australia or globally. No evidence, no citations, or nothing. In fact, every review of existing similar services around the world have shown that it reduced overdosed deaths, reduced ambulance call-outs, reduced public injecting, reduced discarded needles, improved connections to treatment and rehabilitation, and importantly, there's been no remarked increase in crime, violence, or antisocial behaviour. These are not opinions, these are the findings of the endorsed by the Victorian Coroner, the Australian College of Emergency Medicine, the AMA, leading hospitals, and multiple peer-reviewed evidence. If council is going to overturn a previous evidence-based position, then it must bring better evidence to the table than this. This motion does not. It asks councillors to stick their heads in the sand and ignore current and any potential future evidence. We have just adopted a council plan, a municipal public health and wellbeing plan that commits us to evidence-informed policy, reducing harm, strengthening community safety, collaborating with health agencies and state government, and supporting vulnerable communities. A blanket statement that we do not support the MSIS in any form is fundamentally inconsistent with those commitments. We cannot adopt a 4-year plan promising evidence-based community safety and then 2 weeks later pass a motion that ignores the evidence on one of the only proven interventions in this space. This is not good governance, it is ideological freelancing, it is not consistent with the Local Government Act's requirements for transparency, accountability, and evidence-informed decision-making. This motion is internally contradictory. If council wants greater emphasis on drug rehabilitation programs, fantastic. I'm sure everyone in this room wants that. But medically supervised injecting services are literally the most effective referral pathway into rehabilitation that exists, far more effective than street outreach or emergency departments alone. You cannot logically argue for more access to treatment while rejecting the single most successful gateway into that treatment. That's like opposing motorcycle helmets but supporting all measures that make motorcycle riders safer. The motion undermines its own stated objective. The motion sets council up as anti-evidence, anti-health, and anti-credibility. And I am not here to defend drug use, I'm here to defend good governance. And good governance requires evidence, sources, consistency, policy, and policy alignment. This motion has none of the above. Instead, it trades in hypotheticals and fear language like potential adverse impact with zero proof. Council is not being asked tonight to approve a facility. We are not voting to build an injecting service. We are voting on whether to publicly adopt a position that contradicts the evidence and contradicts our own plans and strategies, and then send that position to the Premier and Minister. This would weaken Council's standing as a serious partner on health and safety issues. It signals that our positions can be reversed without new evidence and without alignment to our strategic frameworks. We evaluate real proposals at the time they exist, not rule out proven interventions in any form before we even see them. This is not the message we should be sending. If the state ever puts forward a detailed proposal, that is when council should examine the community impacts, location, security design, supports, data, and the service model. But to declare total opposition in any form before such a proposal even exists is premature and inconsistent with good governance. If any councillor was to hold that opinion personally, that would put us in breach of the Winky Pop precedents. A principled council does not rule out evidence-backed health interventions in advance. A principled council assesses proposals on merit when they arrive. In conclusion, colleagues, we all want a safer city. We all want fewer needles on our streets, fewer overdoses in our laneways, and more people entering treatment. Supervised injecting services save lives. They reduce public drug and improve local amenity. They connect people into treatment. They do not increase crime. They are backed by the coroner, the AMA, VicPol, and global health authorities. We received numerous emails from our biomedical precinct, with the world-leading biomedical precinct that we have built our economic development strategy around, telling us that this is a poor idea. There are undeniably issues with North Richmond, and these must be addressed for state government ever to introduce more facilities. But the evidence shows that medically supervised injecting services achieve those outcomes and that outright opposition does not. What will we do next? Dam the Yarra in case the water falls off the edge of the map? We have a duty to make decisions that reflect evidence, align with our own adopted plans and uphold the governance principles of the Local Government Act. This motion fails that test. Let's be clear, this is not about doing what is right or good or in the best interests of Melbourne. This motion does not engage with any new evidence at all. It does not call for officer advice, seek new information, or present any rationale for overturning a previous evidence-informed stance. It simply asserts a view without foundation, and this is a self-grandiosing circle jerk. Each councillor now has the opportunity to vote if they will put their heads in the sand to evidence, research, and good governance, or choose to approach issues of public health with an open mind. For these reasons, I'll be voting against it, and I would ask that governance note my objections in the minutes. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Rouse. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Andrew, for the effort and passion you have displayed for us tonight, and for seeking to move this motion to the next available FMC. It's a shame this matter wasn't deferred to give us all more time to consider the weighty and complex matters this motion raises, especially given some of the councillors have been only recently returned from an overseas mission and so forth. And I want to thank all the submitters, an extraordinary number of contributions to this debate, which unfortunately we don't have sufficient time to address, and they don't have an opportunity to address us in person. Fortunately, it's simply not realistic to think that we can end all drug use. That is never going to happen. The most common and dangerous drugs are, of course, legal, tobacco and alcohol. And it's our responsibility as a government to think deeply about how best to reduce harm associated with both licit and illicit drug use. This motion in its background expresses a desire to take an evidence-based approach to drug use in our city. So let me present a very small portion of the evidence. Since this motion cites, quote, potential adverse impact on safety and amenity, I will focus on the evidence with regard to local amenity impacts from two very relevant examples. The first is, of course, the supervised injecting service in King's Cross in Sydney, which opened over 25 years ago and was for a very long time the only overdose prevention centre in Australia. It was positioned there for the very reason that King's Cross was a location of high drug harm. And in the more than 2 decades since, for anyone familiar with Sydney, King's Cross has gentrified while that centre has been operating. You would scarcely know it was there. Amenity in the local vicinity has improved. Property prices are rising. There is no adverse impact on local amenity from the centre in King's Cross. Closer to home, of course, we have the MSIR in North Richmond, and that has been very exhaustively assessed by an independent evaluation, two, in fact, independent evaluations. And I will cite from the first of those, which was undertaken 18 months into the operation of the MSIR in North Richmond. It's called the Hamilton Report, named after the first of the independent expert authors, Margaret Hamilton. And it's based on a huge amount and a huge variety of available data. And the evaluation found no evidence that the North Richmond MSIR adversely impacts local amenity. The North Richmond was chosen as the site for the MSIR because, I quote the report, it was the main site for heroin use and related harms in all of Victoria. The City of Melbourne is now the local government area with the highest rate of fatal opioid overdose in the whole of Australia. This is the epicentre that we govern. And the report recommended back in 2020 that a second site be opened in the City of Melbourne for that very reason. We're only the highest now because of the MSIR in the City of Yarra. And how do we measure amenity? It's a nebulous term that planners love and normal people don't use. What on earth does it mean? So in relation to drug use and overdose prevention, this report cites a number of measures that it takes as a substitute for what is amenity and how could it be impacted by such a centre. And in the first 18 months of operation, there was a reduction in public injecting. Surely that's an improvement in public amenity. There was a reduction in ambulance call-outs, which affects both the local amenity due to the noise of ambulances and blocking off the small streets and driveways of Richmond. Plus, we all benefit when our ambulances are not tied up with such call-outs and are more available to the rest of the community. The report found that between 16 and 17% of people reported seeing abandoned syringes on the streets before the MSIR opened, and the same proportion exactly afterwards, between 16 and 17%. So that was unchanged. And of course, between 83 and 84% of people surveyed did not report seeing any syringes. In clean-up efforts around the local area in North Richmond, more abandoned syringes were found, the report concluded, in the vicinity of the MSIR after it opened, and the report found there may be three reasons to account for this.
Lord Mayor, point of order. Are we meant to be restricted to 3 minutes?
No, we're not. Thank you very much.
No,
in clean-up...
Councillor Ball, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I think it's important we hear the evidence before we make this decision. So forgive me for going into some detail, but this is the evidence of the impact of overdose prevention centres on local amenity, which should be at the foremost of our minds as we make this decision. The report found that there could be three reasons for finding more abandoned syringes in the vicinity of the MSIR after it opened. The first of which is that heroin use was increasing prior to the opening of the facility and probably continued to increase afterwards. A second reason was that clean-up efforts intensified when the service opened. So you would expect, if you look for more syringes, you will find more syringes. And thirdly, it's important to note that public injecting and overdose deaths outside of the centre tragically do continue in the City of Yarra because there are state regulations that prohibit certain people from using the MSIR, which would be safe and has never endured a fatal overdose. So those categories of people who are still addicted will still use unsafely and unsupervised. Importantly, during the trial period, the local school, which is next door to the MSIR, and I quote, reported a decrease in discarded injecting equipment and a decrease in overdoses in or near the school. So it's a great outcome for the school. That is borne out in the fact that enrolments at the school next door to the North Richmond MSIR increased over the study period after the MSIR opened, and parents' satisfaction with the school was not affected. So the Hamilton report concluded that amenity did not improve, but neither did it get worse. So the basic premise and foundation of this motion is unsupported by evidence. Meanwhile, and I won't go into detail of the benefits of an overdose prevention centre, which nobody, sadly, is proposing at this time for the City of Melbourne. But the MSIR in North Richmond is diagnosing and treating people for bloodborne diseases, which is both good for individuals and for the whole community to reduce infectious diseases. And in that first 18 months alone, between 21 and 27 deaths were avoided based on modelling from scores of international peer-reviewed public research papers. So with a commitment to evidence, to public health, and to evidence-based public policy, and with consideration of the overdose crisis in our municipality, I cannot support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Dr. Ball. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Councillor Camillo.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just got to put a little bit different perspective in here. We hear different councils, and I'm being a portfolio head of safety. I'm the person, I believe, constantly walking every single corner of this town and even different suburbs. And even tomorrow, Lord Mayor, we have a big walk we got to be doing and checking things around the town. So I'd like to thank all the submitters this evening. It's clear that's just how complex this issue is. However, I have listened to close to our community concerns and about the uncertainty and surround the potential medically supervised injection room, include the potential impact on business and residents and visitors, since constantly from time to time I go to Richmond and myself on the night, on the day, and I keep an eye just to understand. I need to be open for the debate. Because of the uncertainty, I believe that it is time to close this chapter and provide a clear message. Even it was on CBG News, an article that was written about Filipe Leo that has a different change in council, and maybe we need to move on in a different chapter and show to the community what's our position on that. I'd like to see efforts being put into drug rehab, recovery first, and the sooner it is better. Early this year, I was myself self-funded. I went to San Francisco to see with my own eyes again and got to see firsthand the impact that what they're doing there. It's called Recovery First, has had the impact on the community. In fact, I even met Supervisor Matt Dorsey, that he himself was addicted to drugs many years. The Recovery First drug policy proposal defines the main goal of city drug policy as cessation of illicit drugs use and long-term recovery, rather than simply safer ongoing use. The approach emphasizes more treatment capacity, abstinence-oriented programs, and incentivizes all pressure to enter treatment, while some harm reduction elements like Nexolone and basic service remain, but are no longer framed as the central model. The words using by the counselor, the supervisor, was being a drug addict for all these years in my community. Sometimes we need tough love. And he repeated that 3 times to me. The evidence support San Francisco Recovery First approach primarily comes from community response, emphasizing that abstinence and long-term recovery should be primary goals of drug policy, reflecting widespread public frustration with the ongoing visible drugs crisis and overdose deaths. I know many Melbournians share these frustrations. San Francisco supporters argued that the policy aligned better with public expectations and family desires for recovery, hoping that prioritized recovery more clearly will encourage more quit attempts and treatment engagements, similar to how smoke-free environments contribute to reduce tobacco using by shifting social norms. I think it's a different side of the evidence in here. I think you hear all and appreciate the voice of everyone. It's a complex issue, but that's is my view tonight. I would like to thank both Councillors Philippe Lelio and Councillor Gladys Leo for the bravery to bring that today, for moving and second this tonight. I'm pleased to support this motion. Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Councillor Camillo. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Councillor David Griffiths.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And just like Councillor Ball did, I'd like to start by saying I think it's regrettable that we're debating this at Council rather than FMC, which would have given the opportunity for many people in the community to come and present their experiences, both experts in this field and people with personal experience. Certainly when we've had this debate in the past at FMCs, I've found it very useful, very informative, at times obviously harrowing, to listen to those personal experiences. But I think it would have been excellent to have afforded people the opportunity to come and present to us, given the importance of the decisions that we're about to make tonight. So I think that's regrettable. I am happy to hear Councillor Lalieu's answer to the question that I asked him after he moved the motion about the fact that this doesn't cover the treatment by injection of hydromorphine. And I think that that's an important thing to say, because that, of course, is one of the treatments that is planned for the new government facilities at 244 Flinders Street. Again, noting as I have last week during the debate on the congestion levy, I chose not to make a submission tonight around the discussion of the emergency services levy, but it really does feel like we're in for a long year leading up to the election that Councillor Leleu pointed out is coming up. If every week we're going to be dealing with multiple notices of motion related to state government matters, particularly regardless of whether you supported safe injecting room or not, noting that it's now somewhere in the order of 18 months since the state government ruled out a second safe injecting room in Melbourne, but have announced a series of additional investments in the city to assist people with rehabilitation, to assist people with reducing their drug use, and that facility at 244 Flinders Street, those hydromorphone treatments are going to be part of that. A bit like it was remarkable in the debate that we had about the congestion levy a couple of weeks ago, that there was no reference made in that to the fact that we were about to be see the opening of the safe injecting of the stations on the new loop. It's, I think, pretty marked that we've got this whole debate tonight, we've got this motion before us tonight without an acknowledgement of the fact that the state government is investing a further $95 million in rehabilitation and drug services across the state. I'm sure, Lord Mayor, that this will pass tonight. I'm sure you're going to have to write a letter. I would urge you perhaps to acknowledge some of those things in the letter to the state government, because otherwise it looks like we aren't informed about what is actually occurring in our own city. I won't be supporting the motion tonight. I've worked in this area in other roles that I've had in my career, and I have spoken to so many people who have had family who have died, who could have been saved. I believe there's over 11,000 overdoses that have now been dealt with at the North Yarra facility. It's very hard to ignore data like that. It's very hard to ignore the voices of experts who have, at very short notice, written submissions. It's very hard to ignore the cries of families who've gone through this. And I think back to the launch of Judy Ryan's book, You Talk, We Die, which I've taken the time to read a couple of years ago. I think it's impossible to read a book like that and then support a position like we're being asked to in this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Can I also thank the submitters who've taken the time to provide very detailed and careful submissions, which I've had the benefit of reading. It's a matter of public record that I have previously been opposed to a medically supervised injecting room in the City of Melbourne. But as this motion requires us to do, I've been reflecting upon my position now. And in doing that, I've been carefully considering the evidence about the impacts of the previous decision of a state government in this state to open a medically supervised injecting room in North Richmond, carefully reviewing both the Hamilton report and other reports in reference to that injecting room. And the outcomes of that are damning. Quite frankly, the conclusion of the Hamilton report, that there was no amenity impact, is striking when the report is littered with statistics that paint such a bleak picture. Dealing first of all with the public health impacts, it found there was no decline in the number of heroin-related deaths in that municipality in the year after the injecting room opened compared to the 3 years prior. It also found that after it opened, there were more heroin-related deaths in the 1 kilometre surrounding the injecting room than in that location in the 12 months prior. That is, more people suffered from heroin-related deaths in the surrounding vicinity after the injecting room opened than before it existed. The Hamilton report also paints a really damning picture about the amenity impacts. And it's worth remembering the Hamilton report was the state government's own review into its injecting room, commissioned by the minister who appointed an independent panel. That report found residents and business people felt less safe, both during the day and after dark. The reasons they provided included violence and crime, public visibility of drug use, drug deals on the streets, safety concerns for children, aggressive and unpredictable behaviour on the streets, as well as discarded syringes in public places. A survey of Victoria Police working in the surrounding area found that 77% of them observed significantly more people who appeared to be buying and selling drugs after the injecting room opened than before. Now, that's unsurprising. To service users of an injecting room, a street market for drugs springs up around the destination. But what is concerning is not all of those people who are purchasing drugs then make their way into the injecting room. Indeed, 67% of the police surveyed found significantly more people appeared to be under the influence of drugs in the area after the injecting room was established. To those councillors that say there is no evidence about the amenity impacts, the state government's own report provides a very different picture. And I particularly think about that in the context of this council and this council plan, where we have made an extraordinary investment in city cleaning and city safety. And that would be undermined if even a fraction of the impacts detailed in the Hamilton report were repeated on the streets of Melbourne. So for those reasons, I'll be voting for this motion tonight.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Any other councillors want to speak to this item? I'll speak to it as well. Can I begin by saying this is a complex issue. It is a challenging issue. It is an issue where good people can have differences of opinion. Can I also begin by acknowledging and thanking the huge number of people who took the trouble to submit to us on this item before us this evening. Like other councillors here, I did take the time this afternoon to read through the submissions. Submissions from distinguished physicians, medical researchers, people with decades of experience and expertise in drug treatment and rehabilitation. And the conclusion of those submissions is absolutely overwhelming and unavoidable. They conclude that medically supervised injecting services work. The safe injecting service in North Richmond, we've heard this evening, has been responsible for avoiding 11,000 ODs. It saves dozens of lives every year. It has improved the life of thousands of people, people who we live alongside in our community, through the provision of access to support services and health treatments for bloodborne diseases like hepatitis C. I think it's important to acknowledge that the City of Yarra doesn't oppose a medically supervised injecting service. They have instead said they believe it is in the wrong location, located next to a school. And I think most significantly, if you look at the debate, most of the emphasis was on their call for more state government support for wraparound services and investment around amenity. I myself have visited the King's Cross facility. I went there out of professional interest to see for myself firsthand how that facility works. I've visited North Richmond as well, and I can confirm that the King's Cross facility has very significantly improved the amenity in that part of Sydney. Indeed, if you're walking down the strip there in King's Cross, you wouldn't even know that you're walking past a safe injecting service. You could easily think it was a dentist service, a physiotherapist. Certainly judging by what you see on the street, it's cleaner than many other parts of King's Cross. So I've seen that you can indeed balance the provision of medical services in this complex area with improvements to amenity in a densely populated, busy urban area. I also have experienced firsthand the devastating impacts of drug addiction through a close family member. I know that slogans like "just say no" just don't work. I know that you can't pretend that these issues don't exist out there in our community, even in good families. So I think we can't run away from these things. We need to be brave as a community. We need to keep leaning in and looking for how we can make evidence-based decisions. And the evidence is really clear that safe injecting services work, and particularly when they're alongside drug rehabilitation services and when they're alongside proper investment in amenity in these areas. I believe we can do these things in the City of Melbourne. I think that is not beyond us that we could achieve that. And so my position remains the same as it did the previous two times this has come before us. I do support safe injecting service in the municipality of the City of Melbourne, so I'll be voting against this motion. All right. Now, Councillor Guest, have you spoken to this matter? Okay, over to you, Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I wasn't going to, but we heard some very good evidence provided by the Deputy Lord Mayor in the form of the Hamilton report. I wouldn't argue in any shape or form against the potential medical benefits of providing drug services, but where they are provided is of acute importance, and I do take issue with the notion that it hasn't reduced amenity in Richmond. I lived with my family in Richmond for 15 years, And I think I have a pretty good gauge on how the people of Richmond feel about the service provided by the supervised injecting room. I've been there myself, and I do take issue with the notion that it hasn't brought down the neighbourhood. It just has. Where we provide these services is massively important. If we're going to do it, as I hear, a different type of service in the CBD, we're going to have to acknowledge the serious challenges that that's going to bring with us. So, yeah, I will leave it at that, but I will be supporting this motion this evening.
All right, do any other councillors wish to speak to this item? Councillor Leilu, you want to exercise a right of reply as the mover? Over to you.
Thank you. So I think I just wanted to clarify first to Councillor Griffiths. Yes, I haven't included in here, but I do have a personal view and I don't particularly support it, but I'll have that fight when it comes. I felt this one was, we just talked purely about this and I will leave it to that point. So I just want to make sure that I have a personal view on it that I haven't really executed on that. The second one is, we talked about, I think Councillor Bulls, we are now the #1 LGA in terms of, the injecting and the room. So why is it that when there is a North Richmond injecting room and that people can use it, and yet all of a sudden, yet we still are higher than them in terms of the users and also injecting? It's just very clear. If you want to talk about evidence, there is evidence that it's absolutely failed. And there is a place to shoot up the designer to go for it, and it just shows that that's if you want the evidence that is there. If you want to go for number 3, so we're talking about again evidence. I feel that the evidence, we go to the evidence and the data and everything, except I think when it doesn't suit the narrative, then we kind of go and say, well, it doesn't. We should turn a blind eye. That is not good analysis. You have to take in everything. You can't just take one side and you actually go, okay, well, I'm not going to look at the others because it doesn't suit on my narrative. When you say there's no evidence to show its impact, go to Richmond, right? Speak to the people. Speak to the business owners who's lost their livelihood. Speak to the people who've actually been harmed in the process of it. Speak to the many people who have actually been affected. Hell, even the state government recognised, even though went for everything, they even go, you know what, actually this is going a bit too far. That's just how much even that this has gone. And so the fact that we are the only ones who are literally saying, hey, we want one in a city, it's just nuts when nobody else wants them in theirs. And finally, the point about Councillor Rouse saying, we shouldn't be putting our heads in the sand. I would say we are bravely putting our hands up. We are bravely standing tall on what is against what is, I think, a softening of the drugs. I think the fact that we are not putting our heads in the sand, the easiest way to put their heads in the sand is not to even talk about it, not to bring this up. But the fact is, there are some of us who are brave enough to tackle this particular issue because we love the city we do. We do not want it to become what it could be, like what's happening in Richmond. So this is not putting our head in the sand. This is actually some of us brave enough to actually stand up and actually fight against it. And I will fight to the end for it because I completely believe in it. And I thank my colleagues who actually supported it. And I know that there will be other peoples who will shame us and who will beleaguer us and all these other things. But in the end, long run, we will be the one that's right. And I will be more than happy to put this to the vote.
All right, Councillor Leilu, let's now put the matter to the vote. All those in favour of the motion, Councillor Leilu, Councillor Camillo, Councillor Guest, Councillor Louis, Councillor Campbell, Councillor Scott, Councillor Liu. All those against, Councillor Griffiths, Councillor Ball, Councillor Rouse, Councillor Rees. The motion is carried. All right, that concludes the items of general business. We move on to urgent business. Are there any items of urgent business? None that I am aware of. We therefore move to agenda item 9, closure of the open meeting. I call for a councillor to move the motion displayed on the screen. Thanks, Dream Team. Sorry, is that the right motion? Ah, there it is, okay. Yes, all right. Can I have a mover for that motion, please? Thank you, councillor Guest. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Rouse. All those in favour, please raise your hand. It's a procedural motion closing the meeting. I declare that carried unanimously. So I can therefore thank members of the public for their interest and attendance and declare the open meeting closed to the public at 8:17 p.m.